I absolutely love Doom. I also love vaporwave, synthwave, and all the kind of tech-adjacent retrofuturism and surrealist art. After playing Doom for nearly a decade now, I'm surprised to see how few times these two worlds have crossed over. This video is going to be an archive showing off some of my favorite surreal and aesthetic Doom mods I've managed to find over the years. I don't think I need to explain what Doom is if you clicked on this video, so let's get right into it. My soul trapped in a Windows 98 PC is exactly what the name suggests, and it's a pretty good starting point for the type of mods I want to cover in this video. I mentioned it briefly while talking about Doom in my video covering my own personal cozy games. As you can see, it commits to the concept incredibly well and gets a lot of mileage out of the idea for what is mostly a vanilla style map. You start outside of the desktop and slowly fight your way through different parts of the computer in a single map that takes about a half hour to complete. Right off the bat, you get a feel for the bizarre, cramped and cluttered approach to visual design and map layout it takes. I love the clashing styles of smooth, flat color elements taken directly from Windows 98 with the busier patterns meant to represent the circuits. There's a somewhat amateurish vibe to the construction of everything that ironically ends up feeling authentic to the kind of graphic design you'd see online in the late 90s and early 2000s. Bits of detail like the exposed wires hanging down from the ceiling or these animated textures meant to represent files being transferred add so much personality to the environments as well. It's all tied together by this jazzy MIDI track that sounds like something an old installation wizard would have built into it. As you'll realize pretty quickly, the actual design of combat encounters in this map aren't exactly the greatest. They aren't bad or particularly difficult, but they do feel a little bit slapdash. This might have been a bigger issue if it was a full episode or a whole megawad, but for a single map it doesn't bother me all that much, and the visuals more than make up for it. One of my absolute favorite bits in the whole map is this section where you enter a corrupted level of Doom inside the computer itself. It's such a clever idea, and I had a massive grin on my face realizing what they were going for here. The part where you have to shoot at these walls to progress is a bit annoying, but once you know what to do, it's not that bad. After this, you fight through 100 imps in this fleshy pit of viscera. It looks like Clippy got stuck here too. Then you make your way to what I assume is the RAM. It's either that or it's supposed to represent something being downloaded, but either way, the thin winding path with the file transfer textures is very cute. Just past this area is a little Easter egg that replicates the legendary Windows XP ghosting error. The rest of the WAD is much of the same, like this fight with a cyber demon in a room full of GeoCity site buttons. It's a pretty fun map overall, but it almost feels like an appetizer compared to most of the WADs I'm going to be talking about. As far as single map WADs go, Akashic Migraine is easily one of my favorites. Creator M. Essex describes it as misshapen, awkward, and unfriendly, and an inscrutable place that emphasizes restricted movement, hurt floors, platforming, and awkward combat. I think this is a pretty apt description. As soon as you boot it up, you're greeted to a visual onslaught that is equal parts beautiful and abrasive. The cold color palette combined with tons of animated textures all moving in different directions and at different speeds creates a disorienting energy that is carried into every single aspect of the map's design. After being forced to start by punching revenants to death with a berserk power-up, the first location you have to navigate is a maze of bookshelves that seem to rise and fall at random. Just like the visual design, the layout is a perfect balance between disorienting and beautiful. You'll find yourself getting lost sometimes, but it never feels confusing or frustrating. The music hammers this home even further, going from down-tempo ambience to glitched-out drum fills. I genuinely think this WAD might have the single greatest soundtrack of any Doom map I've ever played. There are almost no other maps I can think to compare the design philosophy to. It feels so hostile towards the player and so alien in every way. Every time you think you have it figured out, it manages to pull off some trick or design decision that catches you by surprise. The overall difficulty level is fairly high, though it's by no means a slaughter map. Fights are all tense and well-designed encounters that left me feeling pretty satisfied, and it paces out encounters nicely to give you time to soak in the atmosphere. There is quite a bit of platforming here that might put off some players. There's even an area where I had to turn the brightness up. This tiny winding path is pitch black, and it ends with needing to strafe run diagonally across a dark pit. I personally didn't mind this at all, but I can imagine this might be frustrating to some players. It stays mean right to the end with a pretty rough BFG fight. You're also forced to race across a damage floor covered in pillars that have to be opened. It's possible to get soft locked here if you have no health, but if you're fast and manage the pickups hidden inside, it's the last major obstacle before the finish line. The final set piece of the map is this beautiful section of a derelict city, and it honestly makes me wish I could play an entire megawatt of this. Akashic Migraine was more of a one-off M made as a break from its primary Doom project, Time Tripper. Everything positive I said about the previous WOD goes tenfold here, now wrapped up into a full episode. Straight from the opening when I saw that Jet Set Radio inspired logo and the menu theme that samples Vib Ribbon, I knew I was in for an absolute treat. There are a ton of difficulty options here, but I suggest playing on normal first, even if you're a veteran player. There's a lot to get used to here, and the higher difficulties are either brutal or more of a gimmick for a second run. The opening of the first map is an absolutely killer tone setter before you even get to the first fight.
Shotgun.
And then the combat begins. Unlike Akashic Migraine, which plays pretty much entirely vanilla, Time Tripper is a UZ Doom project that takes a lot more creative liberties in changing the core gameplay loop. It's still much closer to classic Doom than a lot of UZ Doom projects, right down to being designed to be played without vertical mouse look, but it does take it in a more chaotic direction. There's no pistol, and the arsenal is a modified version of the Doom 64 weapons. Everything feels a little faster and punchier, which you will absolutely need to deal with the enemies. All the classic enemies have been completely redesigned to have unique projectile patterns, and hit scan has been completely done away with. Shotgunners blast a spread of plasma balls, chain gunners shoot rapid energy volleys, and the Baron of Hell throws a spinning helix beam. This is all in service of the gameplay kind of feeling like a first-person shoot-'em-up. Between the beautiful cyberpunk-influenced environments, constant volleys of projectiles, and the absolutely explosive soundtrack, it honestly reminded me of Einhander and Bulk Slash more than anything else. The little details like having flashing warning signs before enemies spawn in and having robotic voice lines for weapon pickups just nails the stylish late 90s and early 2000s arcade energy. All of this is shown off within the first map, and it'll give you a pretty good idea of whether or not this is your thing. If you aren't a fan of the bullet hell attack patterns or the idea of a cyber demon in the first map, it might not be your thing, but I'd suggest at least giving it a shot even if you use a lower difficulty than you're used to. It has a built-in checkpoint system I enjoyed playing around as well, but you can always save scum if you need to. I haven't talked that much about the visuals of this one yet because it almost feels redundant to do so. It speaks for itself in just how gorgeous the environments are. It's not content to stick to one style either. Map 2, Liminal Space, is even more visually striking than the first. Everything is made up of flat, unshaded neon colors. It's a huge testament to how good the enemy design is in Doom that you're able to immediately read what enemies and projectiles are on screen solely from their silhouettes like this. Gameplay-wise, this one feels a lot like Dead Simple, and I'm always a sucker for that style of map design. It really distills that bullet hell approach into its purest form as you manage movement and the small bits of cover you're provided. Map 3 starts with this beautiful cathedral-inspired architecture and a room with a giant stained glass window. The way the floor texture here emulates the appearance of light shining overhead is really striking. It features a mid-boss against an archvile in what is simultaneously genius and infuriating. The archvile is on a conveyor belt and teleports between either side of the arena with a wall in the center that moves in a kind of wave motion. You have to constantly manage staying out of the line of sight while the wall moves, and I kept dying to the archvile teleporting behind me right before using its attack. It's kind of maddening, but I do applaud the creativity. This map also introduces the only new weapon of the WOD. The Skull Staff is kind of like a more well-balanced version of the Unmaker. It shoots out a spread of projectiles with random offsets and works incredibly well for crowd control. It also uses its own ammo type called Darkness, so you don't have to worry about cutting into your cell ammo. One thing I really appreciate about Time Tripper is how much effort was made to make disparate assets feel cohesive. Even when I recognize enemies taken from other WADs or id Tech games like Hexen, they've been modified in a way that makes them feel distinct and fit into the vibe of the mod. The OTEX and Ancient Alien textures are worked into everything in a way that is super polished and visually consistent. I fight my way to the exit and... This is easily my favorite map transition of the whole campaign. It's especially funny considering you pistol start pretty much every map except this one, where you get to keep your weapons for about 10 seconds. This is probably the hardest map in the WAD, and it reminded me a lot of map 28 of Ancient Aliens with its boxy arenas and high enemy density. If you push through the Archvile spawns, you're already past the midpoint of the WAD, and most of the stages beyond this one aren't any harder than this. Map 5 is Liminal Space 2, and it's pretty much the first one but harder. Not much to say, but it is very fun. Map 6 reminds me of that art of the dolphin jumping out of the ocean towards a rainbow. It also has the best song.
Check it out. Well, it's the lyrical paragraphs. Your tracks make me laugh. You put on a microphone, you didn't pass math. And science, the main ingredient to beat the finest of the fittest. You get it, yo, I ain't with it. You failed all the lessons, wanna remain in the top 10. Stop looking, listen, get props to my song. I wanna rock about the babies. It won't be long until you push it up daisy.
It also introduces my favorite custom enemy here, these floating brain creatures that spit out a line of bouncy balls. It's fun to weave around the projectiles, and the sound they make when they bounce off the ground is really satisfying. I honestly didn't intend to go through this one map by map, but I ended up having way more to say about it than I expected. The final stage opens with a subway which transitions into an absolutely killer vehicle section. After that, you fight through this huge open area that's reminiscent of Eternity Episode 3, that leads into a big arena fight to close it all out. Once you leave the subway station, you get an end credits map that teases a chapter 2, though this released a full 5 years ago, so I don't know how soon to expect that. Neon Overdrive is one of those things that appeals so specifically to my exact niches that I find it hard to not sound like I'm just shilling when I talk about it. I love Vaporwave and Synthwave, I love Doom, and my WAD preferences tend to lie in MBF21 or other vanilla-adjacent experiences. This one checks off literally all of the boxes and executes all of this to perfection. I captured the footage of it on my main PC for ease of viewing, but this is one I absolutely prefer to boot up on my XP machine. The entire thing ranges in visual style from bowling alley carpet to broken reality, and the level of interactivity is super impressive. Levels are designed with so much detail packed into every little aspect that it's almost hard to believe it isn't using any of the bells and whistles that come with UZ Doom. It's the little things, like being able to interact with vending machines to get health, that really elevate it to feeling more like a build engine game. It's kinda like if Ion Fury had good map design. I could go on for a whole video about everything here. The HUD, the new enemies and weapon sprites, everything is just done so well. Let's take the start of map 2 as an example. It starts with an elevator ride with the ambient sounds of rain in the distance. You walk out into the hallway of a dingy apartment building, doors boarded up and walls plastered with graffiti. You can get a view of the dark city skyline overcast with storm clouds, before passing the crime scene tape into the only open apartment. Giant screens built into the walls display advertisements and weather reports. You can interact with the toaster and fridge just for a little bit of added flavor. Then you go to the computer. The actual meat of this stage is this Vaporwave mansion inside the computer, and it's such a fun gimmick for a Doom map. I love how the switches here are replaced with pop-up windows. This idea is also used for some of the enemy spawns, and it's absolutely genius. I love bits like having the revenants jump out of these pop-up ads to attack you. On top of visual changes, some enemy and weapon behavior is also tweaked. Pinkies are 50% faster, and we have these plasma cyborgs that work like the shock troopers from Legacy of Rest. We also have the Cybruiser, a custom enemy that was in Time Tripper as well, and one that's so ubiquitous he may as well be an official enemy at this point. It's not hard to see why. Cyberdemons can be too centralizing to the design of a map with their giant health pools and huge size, so it can kind of kill the pace. And the Cybruiser is a nice compromise to pack extra heat in the mid-tier enemies. It's always nice to see him kicking around. A few of the weapons are faster, but the most noticeable one is the chain gun. It shoots faster, and I think it has better accuracy, but I'm not totally sure on that part. There's subtle differences, but they make your arsenal just a little bit punchier to contend with the new enemies. I pistol started every map, something that I only recently started doing, and the challenge level felt perfect to me. I won't spoil the whole map set because I think it's best experienced firsthand, but the variety on display here is great. Map 3 is this huge city that feels like something straight out of Duke Nukem. You fight through back alleys and buildings, culminating in some slaughter-style segments near the back half. Every map feels like it has a fresh idea, both visually and gameplay-wise, taking advantage of the vaporwave and synthwave premise it's working with. This one is easily an all-timer despite only being a year old. I have no doubt it'll go down in history alongside the greats like Back to Saturn X and Ancient Aliens. Defy the Omphalos functions as a spiritual successor to the legendary Lilith.pk3. The map set is a series of levels that exploit visual bugs and layer on glitched out textures and compressed audio to create a really disorienting and surreal experience. For as much as I like Lilith, it often feels like it prioritized chaos and abrasion without much care for how it all tied together. Omphalos, on the other hand, feels like a refinement of those ideas curated in a slightly more reserved manner that makes it look and feel even more impressive. Straight from the start, the intense chromatic aberration and color banding set the tone. Sounds are bit crushed and music is messy and out of time, like the Doom equivalent of Trout Mask Replica. Still, it doesn't play its hand all at once. There's a very deliberate pacing to how it ramps up the bizarre and abrasive atmosphere that keeps you constantly excited to see what happens next. You start out fighting through a mostly normal city. As you progress, you're introduced to increasingly more strange set pieces before circling down into a burnt-out version of the place you started. It feels like every turn pulls you deeper into a spiral, descending towards the bottom. New, bugged-out variants of normal enemies start showing up. There are hit-scan imps, barons of hell that throw shotgun blasts, and cacodemons that can pull you towards them. Each has a unique role in combat that mainly serves to hit you by surprise and keep you on edge, trying to gauge in an instant whether or not you're fighting the normal one or the glitched version. Map 2 continues to ramp things up with even more moving textures and louder music. I absolutely love the soundtrack here, and it's a big highlight of the WOD for me. I love how the layout here is still clinging to a sense of logic despite becoming increasingly dreamlike. Sections of the map are connected together in a way that mostly makes sense, but things are literally starting to fall apart. There's quite a few impressive set pieces using explosions to destroy walls and buildings. This section in particular, where you drop an entire floor in an army of barons, was amazing. It culminates in a giant open area around a tower filled with cyberdemons. You have to explore the nearby buildings to find vantage points to blow the pillars up and bring the tower down. You descend one last time into the final stage. Everything about this map is overwhelming. Blaring music and enemy shrieks pound at your eardrums. You're immediately under attack as soon as you spawn in, and there are no obvious paths to take or safe spaces you can catch your breath. Any semblance of reality has given way to nonsensical geometry and dreamlike textures. It feels more like having a nightmare about Doom than actually playing it. The level design here is reminiscent of something like PO'd, with its harsh angles and maze-like insanity. At the end, you're finally given a BFG in front of an ominous door, and when you peek inside... Given how hard the map is, I think it's a really funny subversion to omit a proper boss fight. You do get a credit stage with a MIDI rendition of Girls Just Wanna Have Fun, though. That's everything I've got for this one. I actually have quite a few more mods I could talk about here, but the script is already getting pretty long. I still want to cover stuff like Augur Zenith and Mayhem Mansion at some point, as well as some gameplay mods like Diamond Dragon. If you want to see a part 2 to this covering even more mods, let me know in the comments. That's pretty much it. See you later.